Hello and welcome to episode 520 of the Money to the Masses podcast with your resident expert, as always, Damien Fay, and me, Andy Leaks. Damien, welcome back. How are you doing?
I'm good, Andy, and thank you to those people who have been leaving comments on our YouTube channel and Spotify. If you're listening to this, pause it, go and leave a comment, even if it's just a thumbs up on our YouTube version of this podcast or our Spotify version of this podcast, and we'll reply. It helps with our algorithm and the promotion of the podcast, so please do go and engage. The other thing I'd say, Andy, it's been a really busy week because there's been quite a lot of news that's come out. So the first thing I just want to mention is the Bank of England base rate. So that was kept at 4%. In recent weeks, there had been speculation that we might see a cut, but what's happened is that inflation has proved stickier and it remains elevated. And of course, we've got the uncertainty around the budget that's coming at the end of November. So there could be certain things that certainly economic impacts for the UK, but it could also be inflationary impacts with regard to what's announced in that budget. So at the moment, there's definitely a wait and see approach to what's going on with the economy from the Bank of England. Now, I just want to point out, people will be thinking, what does that mean for the base rate going forward? Will we see more interest rate cuts? Now, the market is predicting at the moment that we probably won't get another cut before the year is out. We might get one more interest rate cut, so 0.25%. But if you look at the markets, it thinks we will get one, but certainly by some point in the spring. It's not certain it will happen before the end of the year. So the reason I bring this up is if you are hoping that mortgage rates are going to suddenly tumble, given that the base rate has a heavy influence on what goes on with mortgage rates, then where we are at the moment, we're not likely to see rates come tumbling down. Now, of course, things can change. First thing, market predictions aren't always that accurate. If you go back to see the past predictions and see where we are now, then they are quite a way off. But at the moment, it doesn't look like we're going to get many more base rate cuts. Just going further out, in fact, the market predicts we probably only will get maybe one more, maybe two more at best in terms of rate cuts over the next 5 years. So the market at the moment is pricing that we might see the base rate get down to about 3.6, 3.7. Now, normally the Bank of England cuts the base rate by 0.25 increments. So that tells you we're probably going to get maybe one more base rate cut. Then that dip is going into next year and it will stay there and then start rising again to back towards 4% in 5 years' time. So the message is we are where we are. We're probably not going to see the rates go much lower. But like I said, bear in mind these things can change. Now, just for people who are interested in the latest predictions, we will put a link in the notes of the show to an article that we update all the time. So I consistently update it with the latest interest rate predictions, so where the Bank of England base rate will be going forward. So you can bookmark it and check it regularly to see how it changes. So when there's different economic updates, whether that be to do with employment or even inflation, then I look at what's going on in the money markets, what the market thinks is going to happen with the base rate, and I update those predictions. So we'll put a link to that in the show notes. The other thing I just want to mention has been quite a number this week of new bank switching offers. So we're looking at things like £175 being offered for you to switch your bank account. So it seems that market's really heating up again. And we'll put a link in the notes of the podcast as well to a roundup of all the latest bank switching offers, which again is updated regularly as they come out and indeed are pulled. So all of that, Andy, I suppose you're going to ask me what's going to be on the podcast this week, and I'm going to jump straight into it because the first thing I'm going to hand over to you. We're going to change tact, actually. You're going to do the main piece on the podcast this week. And this is in regard to cashback. So what we're going to do this week, we're taking a break from some of the heavy topics we've covered lately and going to go to something that has got a bit more wider appeal. And this came about because Andy and I were talking about cashback, and there's been some changes to certain accounts, some new accounts that have been announced, and we want to talk about the different ways you can gain cashback from spending. And we are big fans of kind of passive cashback. So you're just living your life and you're earning cashback from various different things, whether it's bank accounts or credit cards. So Andy's going to cover that in the main piece of the podcast. And the second piece on the show this week is something that's a little bit more philosophical for me, but something that's really important. There comes a point when you're becoming better with money and you start to become maybe a little bit more financially secure. There comes a point and a danger. There's a line you can cross where you start becoming slightly obsessed with money, or it starts becoming causing you more worry again. And I want to talk about that because I pushed something out on social media and it did get a bit of a response, because I think there are a lot of people out there who feel the same, because I certainly have felt this, that you can become a little bit obsessed with money and actually worried about it again, even once you start to become better at it. So I want to talk about that and things that to bear in mind, and hopefully ways that you can improve your mental well-being, really. So Andy, the first piece on the podcast then is in relation to cashback.
Yeah, so in the last few years, we've gotten quite used to the idea of getting cash back on our spending. And when we use it correctly, we can find ourselves building up a decent sized pot. I mean, Damien, you last year in episode 488 explained how you were able to build £1,000 relatively quickly, actually in under a year, using a combination of cashback and also rounding up your spare change. And I'll put a link to that episode in the show notes. And as we head into this autumn period, our minds are inevitably shifting towards Christmas and that spending that we're going to inevitably do. And I thought it was a good time to cover this on the podcast because we have seen signs that the world of cashback is changing, and the generous, straightforward cashback deals that we've gotten used to are starting to be stripped back. So I wanted to highlight firstly a couple of examples of this. And while it is obviously frustrating, there is light at the end of the tunnel, because I'm also going to cover some new and interesting alternatives that are popping up, namely from a couple of challenger banks, some digital banks. So what this ultimately means is the strategy of now just picking a cashback option and then simply sticking with that for years to come and just expecting it to be the same. It's becoming less effective. It means that going forward, you might need to maximize your cashback by looking around and seeing what's available, understanding the terms and conditions on your relative cashback cards, for example, or bank accounts, and making sure that it still serves its purpose and you are still getting the maximum amount of cashback that you can earn. And if it isn't serving you well, then you need to be prepared to ditch it and look for something better. So with this changing sort of landscape in mind, let's run through the ways that you can earn cashback right now. And I'm going to start firstly with bank accounts. I'm actually going to cover 3 different ways you can earn cashback in this particular part of the podcast, but let's look at bank accounts first of all. So I wanted to cover just a couple of bank accounts where we've seen the terms and conditions changing slightly, and actually the deals are getting a little bit worse. A perfect example of this is what's happening with Santander. Now they have an Edge and an Edge Up bank account. These are current accounts essentially that you pay a little bit of money each month, £3 or £5 a month, for access to certain rewards. Now for a long time, these have been go-to accounts for people looking for a decent cashback deal. But from the 9th of September, Santander has removed a pretty significant element of cashback that you can earn. So the 1% cashback that you could previously earn through supermarket spending, fuel and travel spending has now been removed from the spending on the debit card. So you can't earn cashback on that type of spending. Now that's a particularly big cut because someone on the Santander Edge account, for example, the maximum cashback they can earn has actually been halved. So instead of £20 a month, it's now only £10. Now over a year, obviously that's £120. And for Edge Up customers, it's actually slightly worse even still, because it's been cut by £15 a month, which is £180 a year. Now Santander has said that the reason that they've cut back on these deals is that the cost of providing those benefits has gone up. You do still get the 1% cashback on your bills on those accounts, but the incentives now for your everyday spending is gone. And in fact, several other banks have adjusted their offerings in recent years as well, either by tightening the eligibility or reducing what qualifies for cashback, or sometimes they've increased the fees. Another good example is Chase. I'll just give an example of what Chase have done in recent years. And this isn't to say that these are bad things and these banks are bad for doing them. It's just really making you aware that when you do sign up for these bank accounts or credit cards and you think, cool, I'm getting a decent amount of cash back here, just keep an eye, because those terms and conditions do change. I'll give an example with Chase. It launched with that generous 1% cash back on everyday spending that was pretty much limitless. There were a few categories that you couldn't earn spending on, things like gambling and tobacco products and alcohol. But it launched with that generous 1% cashback with no caps. But then they introduced a monthly cap of £15. So that was subsequently stripped back a little bit. And in April this year, they stripped back the categories that you could earn that cashback on even further. And in fact, you can only earn it now on groceries, fuel and transport. So whereas before you may have been able to make a big purchase, let's say a new fridge freezer or a washing machine, and you earn the cash back on that. So these moves that the banks are making show a bit of a significant shift, to be honest. They seem to be moving away from rewarding customers for their everyday spending and focusing more on giving bonuses and rewards for loyalty. Things like having all your main bills paid from your main bank account. But it isn't all bad news, because there are digital challenger banks that are coming up with new ways to reward customers. And Zopper, the online bank, has come up with their Biscuit current account. Now, this is quite interesting because this account you don't need to pay a monthly fee for. A lot of the other accounts we've looked at before, like Santander Edge and Edge Up, you have to pay a monthly fee. The Zopper Biscuit account is completely free. Now, in terms of cashback, it is fairly limited. It does offer 2% cashback on direct debits, which is double what Santander offers. It is, however, capped at a maximum of £30 for the year. So while the rate you get is high, the total amount you can earn on the cashback element is actually quite small. But the real value in that Zopper account that we mentioned comes from other benefits. Again, bear in mind it is a free account. They do pay 2% interest on your current account balance. That's pretty punchy, considering other digital banks like Starling have stopped paying interest on current account balances. And they also give you access to a really competitive 7.1% interest rate on a saver account. It's a regular saver though, so it is restricted by how much you can pay, and you can only pay in £300 per month. But when you add in those benefits on top of the cashback and it's a free account, it's interesting to see. It is good to see that even though other bank accounts are stripping things back, there are new products coming to market. So if you're using a bank account to earn cashback on your everyday spend, it is going to be fairly restricted to what you can earn these days. And if you are going to open a new bank account based on you earning cash back and you're happy to pay a fee for that, £3 or £5 a month, make sure that the cash back you earn does outstrip the amount that you're paying for the account. It's really important. So let's move on then to cashback credit cards. These are obviously a powerful way that you can earn a huge amount of cash back, but they do come with that huge non-negotiable rule. You must pay off the balance every single month in full. Otherwise, the interest rates that you'll end up paying will far outweigh any of the cash back that you earn. So just make sure that you are good at managing your money and you're only taking out that cashback credit card because you know full well you'll be able to pay off the full balance every month. Now, for people who are disciplined with their spending, it can work really, really well. And there's two main players, to be honest, in terms of cashback credit cards. The first is American Express. There's a couple of cards. There's one that you can pay for monthly, but there's also a free everyday platinum cashback credit card, and that comes with a generous welcome offer. They offer 5% cashback for the first few months, and that is up to a maximum of £125. And then after that, the rate drops to a tiered system, so you can earn 0.5% up to, that's 0.5%, up to £10,000 on your spending. And then if you go over that amount within a year, then you can earn up to 1% cash back on anything above that. The main thing to be aware of with cashback credit cards is that you need to spend a minimum amount a year in order to get any cash back at all. And with that one, it is £3,000. Now, I know, Damien, you have an Amex credit card. I have one too. I pay a fee each year for a slightly boosted rate, but I looked the other day and I think I've got about £240, and I think it's due to reset again in November. So yeah, £250 a year just for doing my everyday spend. And I am good at making sure that I pay that off every single month. Damien, you earn a similar amount each month as well, don't you?
Yeah, so going back to that podcast you mentioned earlier where I made £1,000 in a year, that was helped by that boosted new customer deal. But you can go online and look at how much you're probably getting cash back based upon your own spending. So what I would say to anybody who's thinking about a cashback credit card is that you should look at how much you are spending on your credit card statements already. if you've got a credit card, and you can gauge which credit cards could be best for you. So Andy mentioned that obviously Amex have the two cards, and there's one that you pay £25 a year for, and you get higher rates of cashback. It goes up to 1.25% beyond that £10,000 limit. So once you get to those levels, you can really rack up the cashback. So that's what I have as well, because it works out beneficial. You make way more than the £25 back if you're spending enough on the credit card. Like Andy said, though, do make sure you're always clearing your credit card. So I've never had a cashback credit card, or didn't, for years and years. It's only recently that I've done it, because I think you need to prove to yourself that you can live for a very extended period of time where you're clearing your credit card month after month. You never end up paying the interest because you're always clearing your credit card, and that you're not going to fall into the trap of having money and building up debt once again. So once you've prove that to yourself, then I think cashback credit cards are fantastic. I think there are a lot of people that get obsessed trying to get the cash back when you really use these things as we're describing here, where you're just living your life as normal and you're earning the cash back as you go along. I'm a big fan of that kind of passive cash back rather than having to go out and try to actively seek it. So you do make significant sums. As Andy's mentioned, I'll be on for probably, I think, by the time we get through the other side of Christmas as well, probably making £250 this year from cashback alone on the Amex card. But then I know you're going to lead on, Andy, to another card that offers cashback as well, with a slightly different setup to the Amex one.
Yeah, this is one that I don't have, but I know, Damien, you seem to be ticking all the boxes. I know you've got this card as well. So another good cashback credit card that you might want to consider is the Barclaycard Rewards card. Now, it's much, much simpler. There's far less T's and C's really to that one. It just offers a flat 0.25% cashback on all eligible spending. The rate is obviously much lower than what Amex offers, but the big advantage of the Barclaycard Rewards card, other than its simplicity, is the fact that it has no fees for spending or withdrawing cash abroad. So if you are going abroad, it's a great card where you can take it abroad. You get that protection as well because you're doing things on a credit card, but you're earning cash back on your spending while you're away as well. And there are no fees at all. Damien, you went away recently and you absolutely loved that card, didn't you?
Yeah, so that was what I was going to mention. Is again, this is kind of how the podcast piece came about, because usually what I would do is there's plenty of banks out there. There's things like Revolut, for example, where you can get incredible rates on your cash when you're paying transactions abroad, and you are avoiding paying fees. So if you pay on a normal credit card, for example, or banks, although a lot of banks now don't charge fees on overseas transactions, so do check that. But I'm not a fan of using my normal bank account, say for example where my mortgage comes from, on overseas spending. I don't like to spend on that card at all. So what I would do is I would previously maybe move money onto a card, maybe it was something like Starling, or it could be Revolut. So I'm not paying any fees when I'm spending abroad. But the thing is, it's a little bit cumbersome because I move certain amounts of money. I don't like to leave money on those cards if I'm not using them. But then I decided this year to get the Barclaycard Rewards credit card because of the two reasons, as you say. I wouldn't be paying fees abroad. It's easy to use. Therefore, everything I did abroad, I just used my Barclaycard. And I was getting 0.25% cashback. So I know 0.25% cashback is nothing really to shout about, but it's better than nothing. And also, like you say, it's easy to use. So if you've got the two credit cards, then if you can't use your Amex, for example, for whatever reason, and don't forget Amex will charge fees when you're spending abroad, which is why I wouldn't use it. But you can use your Barclaycard Rewards credit card and get some cash back along the way. So I think it's a combo. They work quite well, which is one of the reasons why, as I said, we mentioned it on the podcast.
Yeah, and so the final category I wanted to cover in terms of cashback were websites and apps. Now, firstly, you have that traditional model, things like Top Cashback, where you can earn cashback online or via an app. And the process on those ones is fairly simple. You click on a relevant link through the app or on the website, and you essentially visit the retailer's site via a special link. Then you shop as normal, and the retailer will pay a commission fee, which either Top Cashback or whichever type of cashback app you're using, it will pass some of that referral fee or commission on to you. Now, the problem with those, not the problem, but the kind of caveat, if you like, is that sometimes you'll need to wait a long time for that cashback to arrive in your account. And sometimes the tracking can be a little off.
Bring me in again here, Andy, because I am the person where the cashback tracking goes wrong. So I've had a number of occasions where the tracking hasn't occurred, and it's using sites like Top Cashback where it's happened, and it is frustrating because you can challenge the scenario and it goes back and forth, and it doesn't ultimately always end up in your favor. So I can only speak for me, and that's been my experience. But equally, this time we went away on holiday recently again. My wife actually got cashback using one of those sites on our car hire, and it was a very generous cashback as well, and we've already received that very quickly. So it is one of those things, there are sometimes bumps in the road, but if you can get the cashback using those, and of course you can stack, so where you're getting cashback on the thing that you're purchasing, but you're also using maybe a cashback credit card and you're getting cashback that way as well, then it does work. But yes, Andy, I have been the sort of person that's been a little bit grumbly about some of the sites when it comes to getting cashback. But there is another one which you're going to go on to, and I'm not going to steal your thunder, Andy, because it was one that you introduced me to that I am very much in favour of, and that I have had a very positive experience on.
Yeah, so the main benefits, like you say, of that Top Cashback route is you can get some pretty punchy bits of cashback, like you said, on your car hire. So definitely consider that. Do consider the other side of it where the tracking, and it can be a little bit slow as well. But yeah, to solve that problem, really, there is a new way of earning cashback, and it's emerged recently, and there will be, I'm absolutely certain that there will be other companies that will end up coming about as well, because it has been hugely successful. Now, I'm going to mention the app Jam Donut. Is something, Damien, I introduced you to. We'd actually put a link in the show notes of ways that you can have a look at Jam Donut yourself and earn a welcome bonus as well if you sign up. But essentially, instead of clicking a link, you use the app to buy a digital gift card for the exact amount you want to spend. Or obviously, you don't necessarily have to use it for the exact amount you want to spend. They do run offers and they boost the cash back. And if you know you're going to be spending something at that retailer in the coming weeks, then you can buy ahead of time and take advantage of the deals. But the real benefit of it is the speed. And there's two ways in which the speed really works in your favor. One, you can use the speed of purchase to even purchase things at the till. So let's say, for example, you're in your local supermarket, or maybe you're going into the high street or Primark or somewhere like that, and you want to purchase something. You can go in the app, have a look and see what the cashback deals are. Sometimes they'll be 2%, 5%. Sometimes they're boosted up to 10 or even 15 or 20%. You can then buy the gift card through the app, and then immediately the gift card will become available if everything works right. Every so often there is a slight delay in the gift card sort of arriving on the app, but we'll park that to one side for a second. Essentially, what will then happen is you get your gift card, you can pay with that gift card and walk away. The cashback that you earn from that, let's say it's 5-10% on your purchase, will arrive straight away in your account. And if you're over the £10 minimal withdrawal, you can then just withdraw it straight to your bank account. So it's a really, really quick way. You can find yourself building up cashback pretty quickly in that app and then withdrawing it pretty quickly as well.
So I think, Andy, that it has proved successful, and we use it in our family. So a good example, you could be going to a supermarket, Tesco or Sainsbury's. You've got your shop, you see how much it's going to be because you've been scanning as you're going around. You could be at the till, tap in, buy the card, immediately use it, and you get the cash back within the app. And as you say, once you get above that threshold of £10, you can withdraw it. There are some really punchy cashback rates, like you say. Every now and then they effectively do offers and boost them. Like you could be getting a 9% cashback at Nando's, and so it is one that works very well. Now, there is one thing I will point out. Of course, you're buying a gift card, so you do lose some of that consumer protection. So I personally wouldn't use it if I was buying a very big purchase for something that I might want to take back or have consumer protection on, because technically all I've done is bought a gift card with, say, my credit card. The other thing, just to mention on it as well while I'm thinking about it, is that when you buy the cards, there is a different amount. If you buy it from your bank account, you'll get the rate that they quote. If you use a credit card, for example, and you can use Apple Pay to pay with your credit card, you get a slightly reduced rate, and you can't use Amex on it anymore. So again, this goes back to Andy's thing about the change in the cashback universe. It was great when you could use Amex on it. So you could get the boosted rate, 9%, and then get 1.25% on top of that with your Amex card or something similar, and you really are stacking. Now you can't. So that's another reason that you can have a rewards credit card with Barclaycard, for example. You could still get 0.25% from them, plus on top of your slightly reduced rate if you wanted to use a credit card, for example. But the best rates are if you pay directly from a bank account, of course. But it is an app that I have to say that I have received cashback from, and I would always say once you get the cashback at the threshold you can, withdraw it as soon as you can. Don't leave it languishing within the app. Take it so you've got your money, hard cash yourself. And as I said, it's an app that's very easy to use, and we've been using it in our household.
Yeah, you say withdraw it, Damien. That's absolutely the right advice. There is sometimes an option as well to use the money that you've built up as cashback to then purchase another voucher. So you could effectively use your free cashback to buy a boosted voucher, and suddenly you're sort of, again, it's like that stacking element. And one final thing to be aware of, because you're buying gift vouchers, if for any reason you need to return that item, you'll usually be given store credit or a new voucher in return for that. So it's not quite the same as paying for cash. You can't get a full cash refund in most cases. Just something to be aware of. And just finish off with one final app that I wanted to mention, because it is quite interesting. It's completely passive. You just do one thing and then you forget about it and you can earn cash back. So it's called Airtime Rewards. It's an app that you can download to your phone. And what you do is you link your payment cards to it. You only need to do it once and it's completely safe. It then tracks the spending that you do and works very neatly in the background, tracking everything. And whenever you buy something through one of their partner retailers, you earn cash back without you needing to do anything. It's really quite neat. The only caveat I need to mention, it's a limitation really, is you don't strictly earn cash back that you can earn into your bank account. What it is it earns you credit against your mobile phone bill. So it's quite neat. It's something that you can do that's passive. Anyone can do this. I personally don't do it because it doesn't work for me, because one of the limitations is you can't link it to an Amex card. And of course, pretty much all of my everyday spending I do through my Amex card, so it isn't really worth me doing. So if you spend via a Visa or a MasterCard and you've got a mobile phone, it's a no-brainer really. You should consider doing that because you can earn some easy cash back. So there's a quick rundown on what's changed in recent months in terms of cash back and the different ways you can earn it. But I just want to finish off with a couple of tips that can help you maximize your returns when it comes to cashback. So firstly, make sure that you take advantage of all the different welcome offers that are out there. And actually at Money to the Masses, we've got some welcome offers for both Top Cashback and Jam Donut, and we'll put links to those in the show notes. So with Top Cashback, you can get up to £15 cashback when you spend £15, and Jam Donut, you can get a £5 first time purchase bonus. And as I say, I'll put links to those in the show notes. As we've seen with Amex earlier, there are welcome bonuses for those as well. And we'll put links to the Amex reviews. Joel does a really good job of all of our credit card reviews across the Money to the Masses website. We'll put a link to those in the show notes. So if you know that you've got a big purchase coming up in the coming months, for example, maybe consider looking at one of those Amex credit cards, because you could take advantage of the 5% welcome offer on those cashback credit cards. But again, only consider those cashback credit cards if you can pay the balance off in full each month. So finally, just remember to always treat cashback as a bit of a bonus. It's not a guarantee. We've seen plenty of circumstances where tracking can sometimes fail, voucher purchases can be delayed. Never buy something purely just for the cashback. And also, when you earn money in a cashback app, we mentioned it before, always make sure that you withdraw it as soon as you can, because the money isn't protected in the same way as it is in your bank account. So there we go, Damien. Cashback is probably a little bit more complicated than it used to be. But if you understand all the things that we've mentioned there in that piece of the podcast and use the right combination of bank accounts and credit cards and apps, and just keep on top of the terms and conditions, you can make sure that you maximize and earn as much as you can.
Yeah, so I think it's a brilliant roundup. We didn't cover things like Avios credit cards. Amex do one where you can earn Avios points. We're focusing just on cashback. So you can still earn cashback. There's a great ways to do it, like Andy's mentioned. I will do a roundup actually in the new year of the money I earned from cashback over the previous 12 months, and include things like the money I say via roundups, because that was very popular last year. And I'm not somebody who's obsessed with doing that. I'm not a Jordan Cox, a friend of of the show, but I do it passively, and it just shows that it can be done. So moving on to the second piece of the podcast. This is something that is really a bit more of a thought piece, but I think it's important. Now, during the week, I sent out a thread or a tweet talking about the dangers that nobody talks about. So I'm going to just read out what I wrote, because it did generate a response. And the message was, be warned, when you become better with money, there is a danger line that nobody talks about. And it's the point where money stops serving you and you start serving it. So saving, counting, chasing, and investing, it can start to consume you. And if you let it, it will take more than it gives. And your time, your relationships, even your happiness can be sacrificed and be impacted negatively because of money. And I concluded that money is powerful. It's a bit like fire. It can warm you or it can burn you. And that was something that I've been thinking about quite a lot lately. And it's something personally that I'm sort of having to overcome, because as we all get better with money, because what tends to happen, and we've all been on this journey, or we're somewhere on this journey, where you may have had no money, or you had limited money, or you've made money mistakes, and you start to try and take control, take responsibility for your finances, and you then start to try and make better decisions. And we're part of a lot of people's journeys. So Money to Message, we provide lots of podcasts and information about ways to improve your finances. And that's ultimately what the whole ethos and mission of Money to Message is. And that's brilliant. But then what happens, you start with these good intentions of saving, budgeting, and investing. But over time, you can get to the point where your decisions then start revolving around money. And that is when money stops being a tool and it starts becoming more of a trap. So you don't realize when it happens, but it does start to creep up on you. And I think the closer you get towards becoming not necessarily financially independent, but where you start having less of the stresses that maybe you had in terms of survival previously. Because what we tend to do is, as you become better with money, what you're really doing is starting to control a lot of the things out there that were potential problems. So you can start to mitigate some of the things. Maybe you had an emergency fund in case you lost your job. And once you start having these buffers, you start moving from a world where you start being maybe not necessarily flippant, but slightly ignorant of the dangers. You start to become a little bit more aware of them. And I think you can then start to worry about them excessively. So I know there's the whole FIRE movement, and I'm not critiquing the FIRE movement, but these financial independents retire early. But there are definitely people who have come through that and have not necessarily been happy as a result, because they become very obsessed with money, and it's actually cost them relationships as well. So one of the things that I want people to be mindful of is that we have to be careful that we don't start getting to the point where we obsess about money again. So we've gone from obsessing about it because we maybe didn't have it and we were struggling, to becoming a bit better off and more comfortable making better money decisions, to the point where we then start becoming a bit more towards the Scrooge end, where we're becoming obsessed about it. We don't want to lose it. And I think you can realize it's starting to happen when you start feeling guilt or anxiety every time you go to spend some money. So it might be about holidays. And I'm not saying that people should just be flippantly spending money and go on holiday, but even personally, when we're talking about holidays at home, there'd be a part of me be thinking about, well, the cost and what that will do to like our buffers and all these sorts of things. And they're very valid and important things to think about. But ultimately, you can't take things with you. And if you're starting to make decisions that impact everybody based upon a level of anxiety that you have because you want to feel good about things, because you want your buffer to keep growing, then that is a red flag that I think you're starting to lose some of the enjoyment in life, and actually money starting to control you because you're making decisions based upon it. The other thing is that people start to check their investments constantly, or they might do it when they're on holiday or on weekends or even late at night. And that is something, again, it's a bit of a red flag, because you are now starting to become a slave to investment markets. And also, I think there is another red flag if you're starting to delay things, whether it's to do with experiences or things in relationships or whatever it might be, until you feel that things feel right. It's okay to do it now. And that's even after you've hit some financial goals. It might be about like buffers or starting to save money, and you never feel secure about doing things. They're all red flags. And I think if we're honest with ourselves, I think a lot of us start to feel that at some point. And I think when you're in relationships, one of you starts to feel it more than the other, maybe, and it can be a cause of tension. So I read a lot around money, but I also read a lot of things that are elements of philosophy and all other types of fields of knowledge and education feed into a lot of things that I think about. And I think we do need to make sure that we challenge our mindset about things, and we start to focus more on the process and not the actual prize itself. So we start to believe in the process. So one of the schools of thought is Stoicism. And one of the things about Stoicism is that they focus more on what you're doing and things you have control over and things that you don't have control over. And I think it applies beautifully to money. So when we start out in our money journey, there are lots of things that we don't have control over, and we are a bit out of control, really. As we start to build buffers and we start to put money aside and we make better money decisions, you actually start to control more things in life. And I think what happens is you give yourself a full sense of what you can control and what you can't. And I think it's a danger you can give yourself a full sense of what you need to protect against and what is likely to happen as well. So I think that the message that I want to give people is that you can't guarantee what will happen in life. So you can have the best laid plans, but when you do things, you don't have a certainty of the outcome. And if you read a lot about things like Stoicism and stuff like that, they'll give you examples about things like an archer, for example. They'll do everything they can in their power, and they regularly practice, and they will go to the point where they're going to fire an arrow. And even at the point at which they fire the arrow, they've done everything perfectly. Beyond that, the outcome of what happens is beyond their control, whether they hit the target or not, because of all of the things that happen in the world, whether it's to do with the wind or whatever have you. There is a certain element that's down to whether you call it fate, whether you believe in a religion or anything like that. There's things that are beyond your control, and it's very true with life and money. Things can happen that are beyond your control. And I think where we learn to accept that, which is a big part of what Stoicism is about, is accepting the things that you can control, and then you control them, and the things you can't, you're accepting that you can't, and you're doing your best. And beyond that, that is ultimately beyond your control. So I wanted to bring it to the podcast because the more I think about these things, the more I think that we need to talk about the point we get to where we are feeling more in control of our finances, but then there's a point where we can start to obsess about them, obsess about the retirement plan, and obsess about what could happen if things go wrong and everything like that, to the detriment of actually living life. And so it's just a line in the sand to people. Are they obsessing a bit too much about money? Because we can't guarantee market returns. We can't guarantee what's going to happen in life. So if you keep following a process over time, that can give you some peace of mind. So that's what you have to focus on. So what I want to just finish on really is, how can you start to rebalance? So one of the things I would say is, how do you pull back if you realize money is starting to control you? Well, one of the things is, you could ask yourself is, what is your money actually for? Is it for freedom, security? Do you want it for experiences? You actually give it a reason to be. Because if you don't define it, there is a danger that the chase never really ends. So you're always building money and wealth for a reason that you just becomes the reason in itself. And that is a danger, I think. I think you should create boundaries so you don't obsess over numbers. You don't check your portfolios too regularly. Do it maybe once a month at best. I think you should always spend consciously, and you've got to include things that you have that joyous spend that reminds you that money can enhance life. So when you're budgeting, think of it as that spending plan. So you have room to enjoy things as well, because if you don't, then ultimately what is the point? And always value time over money as well. And the other one, which I think is really important, I think everybody should practice gratitude a bit more. And again, read lots of this in other philosophies, but you should stop and notice what money already allows you to do. And I think that gives you a huge mind shift change, because I think a lot of people, especially with social media, it's one of the things that I don't like about social media. People are always showing off what they've got. They are portraying an image that isn't real. It's built on debt. And if you consume that, I think people can always be trying to keep up with the Joneses, and the Joneses themselves are portraying something that isn't reality. So I think it's always important to appreciate things, practice gratitude for what you actually have. And I want to just close out with a quote, which is that money is a tool and you should use it to build freedom, not to build another prison. So hopefully that's given people food for thought. And if you're out there and you've been feeling anxious about these things, then you aren't alone. And I think there is a danger that you do get to that point where you do sometimes need to have a bit of a reset. And often, funny enough, it happens to a lot of people when they do take a break and go on holiday and they do stop focusing on their money. So I would love to hear from people who listen to this podcast. And if they felt this, because there were people who wrote to me on social media that said that they've been battling with this as well themselves, I would love to hear about how they are finding it, how they've overcome it, how they maybe reset, or how they focus on things to make their life a little bit more less obsessed with money and stopping money controlling them. So, Andy, a bit philosophical this week, but I do think it's important that we do have conversations, not just about getting rich, not just about taking control of our money, but also what happens when you eventually start to get down the end where you are starting to feel a bit more in control.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point. I was sitting there nodding along to a lot of what you were saying there, and a lot of that touched quite deeply with my particular situation, because I get deep into the money saving thing and I worry and I stress about money, but then I kind of have a release valve where we have a bit of a splurge, whether it's a holiday that you mentioned, whether it's that new purchase, whether it's, relaxing a bit and letting the children enjoy a bit of free time. And I think buying things like paddling pools and things in the summer, I think that's such a waste of money, but actually the enjoyment it gives you, it is worth it.
But I say that, Andy, you mentioned the paddling pool. I did that this summer. So my wife put one of those big pools and I was like, knock yourself out. I really didn't want it. I didn't, because it was going to ruin the grass. You have to get to the point, the enjoyment that the kids had from it was worth more than what the pool was worth. It wasn't that expensive. And so I think it is important like that. And also, it gets back to that thing that, yes, you want financial security and you do want your family to have security and a future that you can help build, but they're not going to sit there and go, wasn't it great that Dad had a big buffer in his bank account, or wasn't it good that his pension fund did this or whatever? Because that isn't what memories are and what people think about. Equally, on the flip side, they're not going to want the bailiffs coming through the door because I'm going completely frivolous and spending money like it's like going out of fashion. There is somewhere we've got to have a happy medium. So that's where my head's at when I'm thinking about money as well. I'm trying to make sure that I'm not going down that road, because I think, especially when we're doing what we do, Andy, we do it all day, every day and talk about money. And it's important not to go down that road. Anyway, that is it for this week on the podcast. As ever, do please like and subscribe to everything we do on social media: Instagram, Threads, X, Facebook. Join our Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/money to the masses. Do make sure you go onto YouTube, you like and subscribe to everything we do there. But also Spotify, even if you don't particularly listen to the podcast via that method, it is a very direct way you can communicate with us. So do leave even just a thumbs up emoji or whatever emoji you want, and we'll reply to it, or a comment. It helps with us being visible, being able to be found by other potential listeners. So it does really help us. It's not just for ego, it's to try and grow what we're doing. So if you like the show, then it means there are plenty of other people out there who do as well. And also, it goes without saying, do please tell everybody about Money to the Masses and what we're doing. And finally, don't forget to go and try themoney.ai if you've not already done so. So that's DAMONEY.ai, which is our new AI tool, which is a financial guidance tool that can answer your money questions for you instantly. So, Andy, all that's left is for me to say until next time.
Until next time.